Kirby, the Curbmeister, Sir Curbington III, Curb Angle, Curbled Milk. You know the man well enough, he need no further introduction. It's Kirby, the fleshy ball of pink marshmallow. Kirby has been around for a while now, and he's had many games created in his name, and it all started with one cute little project made for the original Game Boy in 1992, Kirby's Dream Land. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know everything there is to know about Kirby because, to be honest, I know virtually nothing. The first time I ever crossed paths with Kirby was in Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, and then I'd go on to play as him a bit in Super Smash Bros. For the N64, but aside from that, I'm a complete noob as it pertains to this series. So for all you Kirby fans watching, this is going to be a real treat, because I have decided to dive headfirst into Kirby's soft, spherical physique, and I'm starting from the very first spark that ignited the flame, Kirby's Dream Land. I'll be doing what I always do.
Shitting on your favorite games.
No, I'll be taking a look at the title in a review-esque nature that'll be framed around a particular question. And for Kirby's Dream Land, the question is really quite simple. Is Kirby's Dream Land a good or bad first game in the series? Now remember, I'm a noob, so I'll be coming at this from a first impression perspective, but hopefully this title can, with passionate vigor, plant its seed deep inside me. Don't be gross, viewers. That will blossom me into a full-blown Kirby fan. Because that's really what I want, it's what you the viewers want, and hopefully it's something that I'll still want by the end of this video. With all that said, let's get to it. What? You waiting for a fancy transition or something? Kirby's Dream Land is an original Game Boy game from the early 1990s, so naturally you would expect it to be visually unimpressive. And while there unfortunately isn't any color here to add that extra bit of life to this world due to the limited hardware of the time, Kirby's Dream Land still manages to make the most of what it's got in expert fashion. In just a tiny bit of screen space, the developers managed to introduce Kirby as a series centered around a vibrant fantasy. These worlds are heavily mystical in nature, with the most immediate tone being that of a light, playful atmosphere. You get the sense with Stage 1, Green Greens, that these are high-energy environments where the creatures that live there generally exist in whimsical harmony, as long as they aren't disturbed. Kirby himself comes off as a carefree guy who just wants to live in leisure, but also doesn't mind stepping up to save his friends when the time calls for it. And while it seems the cosmos are facing a general disturbance with the arrival of King Dedede, that joyous atmosphere still holds steady throughout the adventure. I mean, sure, there are lots of menacing creatures infesting these worlds and causing lots of trouble throughout the galaxy, but in perfect Kirby fashion, not even that can shake his unperturbed, positive attitude. I mean, it doesn't seem to bother this guy at all that the entire cosmos is being infected by this disturbance. Kirby is just that easygoing. If any negative energy comes his way, Kirby is so soft and squishy he just absorbs it. Another thing to note is how easy it is to settle into this gameplay style. You've got an uber basic side-scroller here where you're primarily killing enemies and every now and then doing some platforming. Kirby's primary mode of attack is sucking up creatures and various objects and spitting them back out at enemies. Yeah, Kirby will eat just about anything, and anyone for that matter. It's a bit of a problem. Yeah, stay the hell away from me, Kirby. He also makes his way around the map with ease by doing a little float jump through the air. God, isn't he just the cutest little thing? Overall, it's a very simple gaming layout to ease into, and I can see the appeal here, as almost anybody could pick this up and get the hang of it pretty quickly. I won't lie though, this style initially came off to me as overly rudimentary upon my first playthrough. The process of sucking up an enemy and shooting them at the next one gets repetitive really quickly in Green Greens. This is clearly due to it being the first level, so the whole ecosystem is extremely basic right off the bat, which is forgivable. You're more or less holding forward to get to the end of the level, and a few enemies will be in your path to slow you down. I mean, it's basic kindergarten stuff here, and had this been the case the whole game, we would definitely have a problem. But thankfully things pick up by Stage 2, where we start to see a smoother blend of the platforming and combat to make for a style that is far more interesting. In Green Greens, the combat and platforming sections seem to be mostly separated. You'd fight enemies in one and then platform in the next. But now you're doing them at the same time, and I absolutely love this. Enemies will try to shoot you out of the sky as you float between areas. You'll be faced with situations where you can either fight all the enemies to advance forward, or you can try to maneuver around them. It's these little moments that create these strategic conundrums where you, the player, can decide what's the best way forward. It's a surprisingly complex system for such an old game on such a limited piece of hardware that kind of took me aback. Not only is each level compact with exciting environments and consistent theming across the board, but the gameplay complements that with the multi-dimensional combat and platforming system that was probably a good deal ahead of its time. Even the boss fights are super engaging to tussle with. Each one offers a unique layout to them with their own set of moves that challenge your reflexes in different ways. These bosses don't just rely on primitive button mashing to get you through them.
Well, okay, maybe this guy a little bit.
And overall, it's such a rarity to see bosses get this much respect from a game of this era. The Wispy Woods makes its iconic debut as a cornerstone of the franchise, with it being the first boss fight in-game. And even though it's a pretty simple battle overall, the small details such as its change from a stone face to a crying face after you've beaten him makes it a memorable boss fight. Krakow is an exciting battle that hosts a random assortment of swift attacks that require you to not only memorize his patterns, but also have a quick reaction time to when he dishes them out on your ass. Also, can I just say that Krakow is a really weird name for a boss? Deity is more of the same thing. Quick reaction time and memorizing patterns, it's all just great stuff. I'd be lying if I said it were a sufficiently challenging time, however. While the levels and bosses do pick up as you progress, the difficulty seems to peak a little early. I figure this is to make the game more accessible to a wide variety of players, and that's all well and good, but it also means that Kirby's Dream Land overall makes for a very quick adventure. There are a mere 5 stages total in-game, and I was able to complete the whole thing in just about 30 minutes. That's a really short amount of time to spend getting the hang of the gameplay and blowing through all the bosses. And this in general highlights the biggest problem I have with Kirby's Dream Land. It ends before it truly begins. Because while the game was a blast to complete, it felt like there was so much money left on the table with this style. There was so much potential with Kirby's Dream Land that wasn't realized here. It felt like we only got a surface level experience of Kirby's philosophy. And though that is likely for a number of circumstantial reasons, it's still slightly disappointing. I loved playing this game and I genuinely wanted more of it. But then it just sorta ends. There is of course the extra mode that you get after beating the game, which grants you a more challenging version of the same levels, but that challenge only manifests itself in a higher amount of enemies and not more complex levels. With that, the extra mode also comes off underdeveloped to me. But hey, it's all good because we know there are plenty more Kirby games out there that took the ball and ran with it, so there's no need to worry about him missing out on his full potential. I'm simply explaining how this whole experience comes off to me, being the gigantic noob that I am.
And what does that make, Ketchup?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I'ma let y'all know, I fuck with Kirby's Dream Land. I enjoyed it so much that I was upset when it ended so quickly. Overall, it seems that Kirby's Dream Land was at best a fun little game that was ahead of its time, and at worst, the bare minimum Kirby experience. It was a fun time, but I feel it was only a taste of what Kirby would become, and as a first in a series, it was arguably underdeveloped. And that hurts its impact in my eyes a little bit, because I imagine as I play through the more advanced sequels, this game will just become further overshadowed as time goes on. But in spite of that, it still doesn't change the fact that this is an impressive little project given that it was on the Game Boy. In general, I am thankful for my time with this game, but at the end of the day, it only makes me more excited about playing the sequels than replaying it. I give Kirby's Dream Land for the Game Boy a 6.8 out of 10. And my final verdict? Shmeh. As far as the first game in a series goes, it's one of the games of all time.